Okay, you guys, still in chapter 7. We're now going to take a look at exercise 7-10. It's on pages 382 and 383. I thought this one was a little different as well. We're doing a performance report. We're going to compare budget numbers to actual numbers and get a variance. And then we'll call that variance either favorable or unfavorable, depending on, of course, which way it went. And we're going to do this by starting with sales, deducting variable cost to come to contribution margin. If you remember from managerial accounting, or principles too, depending on where you took it, that might be called a different name, but the second part of the, I guess the second part of the first accounting course, if that makes sense. We took sales minus variable cost to get to contribution margin, then subtracted fixed cost to get to our income number. Okay, so this is the numbers we have in this column will be our budget for the month of May, and then we're going to compare that to our actual numbers for May and get a variance. And since we do have the actual numbers and the month has ended, and I think that I'm disagreeing with these on some of their templates. I'm going to say ended here, because if we have the actual numbers for May, the month must be over. All right, so let's start with sales. Let's just do the budget column first. Or I guess we could just do sales first. So let's look at sales. Let's read it first, though. That'd be the place to start. Merriman Manufacturing Incorporated has the following flexible budget formulas and amounts. So here are their budget numbers. Okay, sales 20 per unit, and they're estimating sales at 6,000 units, so it equals 20 times 6,000. I like for these to be centered. And that still doesn't look centered to me for some reason, but okay, let's go with it. The actual, they just give you the number, 125,000. All right, we'll come back to the variance. Or we can do it as we go. To get the variance, they're saying actual minus budget each time. So it's equal to actual minus the budget. There we come out with a positive $5,000 on sales. You guys, whether it's favorable or unfavorable, I like to just think about it logically. If our actual sales were more than the budget, is that good or bad? Well, of course, that's good, right? So I'm going to put an F for favorable. Okay, we'll just go through them that way. All right, our one variable cost would be direct materials. I'm sure you recall this, but back in managerial accounting, we talked about it. Variable costs are ones that in total increase as production increases. So, of course, direct materials would be a variable cost. If we were producing chocolate chip cookies, one direct material would be chocolate chips. The more cookies we make, the more our total chocolate chip cost would be. Okay? So direct materials, our budget is $5 per unit times our 6,000 units. It's 30,000. Our direct materials, our actual costs are 32,000. Now we're going to subtract budget from actual. The variance is $2,000. But up here we're talking about revenues, here we're talking about costs. So let's think about it. Our actual direct materials cost was $32,000. We budgeted $30,000. So that one's going to be unfavorable. You can't just go by if it's a positive or negative number. A positive variance would be favorable if you're talking about revenue. A positive variance would be unfavorable if you're talking about your cost. Okay. Next we'll go to direct labor, also a variable cost. You guys, the more we produce, the more direct labor we're going to need. So direct labor in total increases as production increases. So of course it's a variable cost. The easiest way to think about that, we'll have a lot more labor costs if we run 3 shifts than if we run only 1 shift. So our direct labor budgeted cost for 6,000 units. What is it? 3 per unit times 6,000 units. 18,000. Our direct labor actual cost is 19,000. Okay, so we're going to say actual minus the budget. Now, is it favorable or unfavorable? Well, you could say it's a positive number again, and we're still dealing with cost, so it's going to be unfavorable. But I like to look at it. You know, look at it and make your determination. Don't always go by positive or negative number. If our actual cost for direct labor is 19,000 and we budgeted 18,000, what do we want to be on direct labor? Over budget or under budget? We'd rather produce at 6,000 units with 17,000 of direct labor cost, not 19. We're over budget on a cost, so that's unfavorable. For variable factory overhead, $4 per unit times our 6,000 units gets you 24,000. Our actual variable factory overhead, 26.5. And then this one's going to be equal to actual minus the budget, 2,500. They're not mixing this up too much. If our actual cost is more than our budgeted cost, again, that one's unfavorable. Variable selling and administrative expenses, $1 per unit times 6,000. Well, I'm just going to go ahead and do the math there in my head. Our actual variable selling and administrative expenses were $6,500. That's a $500 difference. Actual was more than budget, so again, unfavorable. Now, contribution margin is going to be equal to sales minus variable cost. So it's going to be sales minus all of our variable costs. And now I'm just going to drag that over to carry the formula over. Okay, again, to get the variance, we're going to say actual minus the budget. We get a negative 1,000. Here's a nice example of why I don't like to go by whether it's a positive or negative number. I like to be consistent in calculating the variance. The whole time I've been saying actual minus budget. Well, let's think about this here. Our contribution margin, we expected it to be 42,000. It's only 41,000. Well, that's unfavorable for us. Hope that makes sense. It was less than we hoped it would be, or than we budgeted it would be. Now we need to deduct fixed costs to get to operating income. Well, our fixed factory overhead, the budgeted amount is 20,000. The actual amount is only 18,750. Again, I'm going to say actual minus budget. We got a negative 1250, but let's compare it. Our fixed factory overhead, we expected it to be 20,000. It's only 18,750. So together, so what? We beat the budget, right? Our cost was less than we expected it to be. So that's favorable for us. Okay, fixed selling and administrative expense on the budget, that's $15,000. On actual cost, $14,500. I'm going to say actual minus budget again. Alright, but now let's think about it. Okay, our actual cost was $14,500. We budgeted the cost at $15,000. We beat the budget. The cost was less than we expected. So that one's going to be favorable. Now our operating income, we'll say our contribution margin minus our fixed cost. We get operating income. The budget was $7,000. Actual operating income though was $7,750. Actual minus budget is $750. Well, is it favorable or unfavorable? I hope by now you can tell me. Our operating income was $7,750. We expected it to be $7,000. Income was more than we thought it would be. It's definitely favorable. Okay, you guys, if you can work this one with me, I don't think you'll have any trouble with your next homework problem, which is exercise 7-9. Thanks a lot.